Quick disclaimer here, these aren't opinions, these are facts. Do what I say if you want to do it the right way. What primer do I use? Okay, this is what you do. This is for restoration purposes, custom work, not collision repair. You can do whatever you want on collision repair because who cares about that stuff? You have your metal work done, the car's in bare metal. What do you do next? Epoxy. Like DPG, DP, LV. You can also do the DP, LF. If you can find the LV, which is what you have to use if you're in California, it's awesome. So, what you want to do when you pick an epoxy primer is make sure you do your research. I've seen cheap epoxy primers that actually can't go on bare metal. Why do they even make those? So, everyone knows you have to epoxy your bare metal. So, you've got your epoxy spray. Now what? Now you let it dry. A week, two. You gotta let it dry, and then you have to sand it to do your filler work on top. But the tech sheet says I can put body filler on it as long as it's within 18.5 days. Well, don't do that. That's stupid. Here's the thing about epoxy. It's good because it sticks to bare metal. It's also very, very slow. So, that's why you can put body filler on it for a couple days, a week, whatever they say. Because it's not dry yet. So the body filler is still they're gonna like, you know, connect. Body filler will dry in like an hour. An hour after you put filler on, it's done shrinking. So here's your epoxy. Here's your body filler you put on. Body filler's hard, but the epoxy is drying and shrinking and pulling itself away from the filler, which could lead to delamination, filler flaking off. Who knows? Things you don't want to have happen. Why would you even risk that on a project you're spending hundreds and hundreds of hours on? Makes no sense. Let the epoxy cure, sand it, you know, block it with some 120, 150, scuff it up good before you lay your filler on. Anyways, your bodywork's done now. It's time to prime. So, you can't see that, it's up in the shadows. High build. What you want to do is polyester primer. And that's it. Use a good one. Like, you know, I use slick sand, a feather fill. I've heard the U-Pol reface is good, never tried it. Everybody makes a polyester. Just most of them, I've never really used a bad one. I think Clausen had one I tried that I didn't really care for. But yeah, anyway, polyester primer is what you want over your bodywork. So you sand that, you get that sanded out to 320, 400 grit, and you're ready for your final prime, which you don't really need. Say this isn't how to do bodywork, this is just the primers to use, so I'm not going to get into all of that and how you avoid scratches and stuff. But once you have your poly finished sanded, you're ready to seal. You have to seal over the poly, you can't just lay base over it. So you're going to use a urethane sealer. Not a urethane high build primer, but a sealer. And then you paint. You can sand your sealer if you want, or just lay your sealer wet on wet with your base and off you go. That's the gist of it. Here's a couple of examples. This is epoxy. This was what's on the bare metal. That's the black you see here and here. This is polyester. Sand that out to 320, 400. This is what I'm using for my sealer. I'm gonna put this on and I'm gonna wet sand it after it's cured, just because I wanna lay base over a completely smooth surface with no peel. It doesn't really matter. You can lay sealer out smooth enough and go on to base and clear and it'll be fine, but it's just the way I prefer to do it. Here's some epoxy I saved from when I epoxied this car. Everyone's favorite thing to look at is how much it shrinks. That's a lot. And that's why you want to let epoxy cure before you do anything with it. And that's why I don't like, Evercoat makes a super build 4-to-1 or an optics 4-to-1 high build hybrid. Go on bare metal and high build like a poly. It shrinks. If you look at the hardener, it's not a little tube of fiberglass hardener like this is. It's in a glass bottle and it's got some solvent in it. And it doesn't shrink a lot. It doesn't shrink as much as epoxy, but it does shrink. So I don't like it. I mean, in theory, it's good. They're trying to eliminate the epoxy step. But it shrinks. And they know it shrinks, and I've talked to them about it, and they said, well, it's not that much. It's not that big a deal. Well, it's not that big a deal to them because they're not doing this stuff. But anyway, here's a puck of a poly, and this isn't even the one I used. This is a USC Eliminator I used on that Mustang, and you can see practically nothing as far as shrinkage. And that is why you don't use epoxy for high build and blocking out bodywork and stuff like that, unless you let it sit for months. So that's that. That's all this. There is an alarming amount of bad information out there when it comes to primer. And it's not just because I think I know everything. I don't know anything. So listen to me and I'll tell you which one you should use. But really, there's videos out there telling you that poly shrinks and epoxy doesn't, which is the total opposite of what happens. It's common sense. Anybody that uses this stuff knows. There's a company out there that just came out with this badass new high build epoxy. Sand it in 2 days. It's not dry yet. Why would you do that? It's ridiculous. Quick answer to a few questions that I always get. I did my body work on top of the epoxy and I'm ready to poly, but I have bare metal spots. What do? You mix up some epoxy and you put like one light coat over the bare metal spots. Not on top of the filler, just on the bare metal. One light coat and let it dry. And then when it dries, just scuff over it with some 320, 220, whatever you want. But, or what I might be guilty of doing sometimes is taking one of these little spray bombs of self-etch and just putting a light coat over the bare metal. I don't recommend that, but I tend to do that a lot. I haven't had any problems, so there's that. But epoxy, being that's the same thing you already used underneath, is probably the right thing to put back on those bare metal spots. Just don't hammer it on. Put one light coat on, let it dry, scuff it, and on with the poly. And that might be it as far as questions I get. I get a lot of questions, but they must always be the same one. See, I have a little bare metal right here. That's another case where I'm going to take this right here and I'm going to go before I spray my sealer. Any other questions? What else? Nope, I think that's the only question I've ever asked. So, hope you didn't learn anything. And I'm sure everybody knows everything anyway, so why did I even make this? It was really only for one person.